Welcome back to a bloody Regal Tails. And we left off pretty messed up. I'm pretty sure this is some kind of fever dream. Prom ain't dead? Nah. We've seen her tear through flesh. Trees! And this is too nonsensical. The scaling really feels like it's in a nightmarish dream world here. But Sleepy might be wrong. Usually I'm always right, so yeah. A mighty force pulled her back by the wrist and away from the general. Snarling like a rabid beast, she bared her fangs and her claws at the whip, tearing at it. Another chain found its way to her other wrist. The chains pulled back with such might she had no way to oppose it. Oh my god, there's no ED there, Sleepy. Freaking Dumbo. Each attempt to break free, to snap them or pull them with her, was met with solidarity from the chains. Her heart raced as this. Wait, oh, you know, it's correct. I'm like, sometimes my brain tries to change the words. It's trying to autocorrect it, even though it is right. It's like, rather not really an autocorrect, more like my brain wants a different word for the sentence or some shit. That's why you'll hear me, some of my videos, I'll just like stop first 2 words or first 4 words in a sentence, because my brain just immediately, hold up, what if we change that word? And then I actually try to think it out loud. Well, you won't hear it, but I try to like read it inside my head and like, oh no, it doesn't work. Her heart raced as the situation slapped her across the face. She was powerless to do anything, and worst of all, she was helpless. The ground beneath her began to tremble. The chains tightened around her wrist, pulling her back with every thunderous quake produced. She jerked her head back to steal a gaze from over her shoulder. Her worst fear rang through as she spotted what lay beyond the dark. Her captors stepped into the light, revealing their monstrous armor-clad selves to her. The dirge, the build of their bodies doubled against Naya's height and tripled her in muscles. Yeah, this is a nightmare. Crom, you fucking... Once she returned her gaze back to the general, she was met with a brutal jab to her left eye. Crom was standing before her with a grimace plastered to his face. That's enough out of you. For too long we've put up with your outlandish behavior. We took pity on you when you'd lost our farmlands, but you've taken advantage of our generosity for the last time. Crom slammed his fist down against her muzzle, cutting her snout open on impact. He wasn't finished with her. He gripped his right paw around her throat, forcing her eyes to meet his. On behalf of His Majesty and His Majesty's army, believe me when I say we're done with you. The grizzly let her go and snapped his fingers to his men. Naya grasped for air, grunted and spit at him. Her arms quaked, struggling against her binds. Crawl! Crawl! Her outcries were cut off as a cold metal collar snapped around her neck. Sharp spikes lined the interior that jabbed at sensitive... What? A thick iron ore connected the collar to its aster, easily manhandling the lioness to its whim. She was pulled back, dragged along the floor on her back. She was met with a monolith of a soldier glaring down at her. It raised its leg over her head. She couldn't move. Oh, sorry about the background noise. She couldn't move. Her heart plummeted as her assailant slammed its devastating foot into her skull. The impending force of the blow sunk her body down, causing her to spaz frantically. The jolt of the impact caused her to flail around and sink into the ground once more, this time with a heavy thud. Her mind drifted from her body, descending into a weightless void. Thud. Naya groaned at the harsh fall. A white light burned to the back of her retinas. Her eyes fluttered open through the intense rays, and she tried to make sense of what she was looking at. It was a dream. It was a nightmare. I freaking told you. She must have been like knocked out for days if that dream was like, or nightmare to be exact, has been going for some time or some shit. Naya awakens to find herself slumbering over a fast-fold medic bed. her long arms and legs slumped over the edges. A wave of nauseating pain coursed throughout her body. She lifts her head up to find her chest, arms, and legs wrapped entirely with bandages. She groans while groggily scanning the small medical tent. She was struggling with her vision, everything faded in and out with a discoloring blur. She manages to keep her attention focused on a notably shiny object beside her. She rubs her eyes and finally recognizes a serving table across from her, offering a platter of food and water. Naja begins to meekly crawl towards the table. She reaches out and knocks away a serving glass and goes straight to the pitcher of water. Sorry, a plane just passed by. So I don't know if you heard some weird background noise. But yeah, going back to it. She breaks herself on the table before chugging down the pitcher, only stopping to take breaths and scarf on some bread rolls. She takes a whole platter from the table and rests it in her lap. She begins to inhale her meal with pure gusto. Or gustos. It felt as though she hadn't eaten in days. The hunger she bared was primal, beckoning her to devour every crumb before her, dulling her mind in a small feast. In the entirety of this, Naja feels as though her mind was not one with her body. She ate and drank, but couldn't taste any of it. It was as though her body was possessed. Her mind attempts to recollect what she was doing, wondering how she got here in the first place. Was this a dream, or did she just wake up from one? Her body continues to consume the dish whilst she tries to remember everything that happened. She was fighting a bitter standoff with the Emperor, and then everything went black. Then everyone was gone. A blazing inferno ravaged her mind. The heat, the ash, and roaring flames engulfed her senses. The cries of her men, alright. The cries of her men echoed through her ear canals. The unruly shouting of her men screaming grew louder and louder past the smoldering flames. Her body began to tremble as their deafening roars drew closer to her. The sound alone snaps her out of her stupor. Stupor? No, I think stupor. She drops a food dish as she realized a haunting conclusion. The yelling was coming outside of the tent. The shocking realization snaps her back in control of her body as her fight or flight instincts took wind. She staggers to her feet and catches a glimpse of a window flap to the tent. The commotion outside grew louder as she nears it. She grips the fold and rips it wide open, readying herself to charge out of it. She's awestruck with what she witnessed. Meshed within a valley of Imperial tents, a cluster of Imperials and her clansmen were gathered around a dining table. An Imperial Clydesdale horseman was in a strenuously arm wrestling match with a female Shaskaran capybara. Sorry, I ate something spicy. Sleepy ain't got the best feeling right now. Everyone in attendance were hooting and howling at the combatants, all the while mingling, drinking, and laughing with one another. They didn't even seem to notice their leader's head poking out of the tent. Naja retreats back and drops a window flap. She takes a minute to process everything she saw and everything she thought she knew. Was that entire experience really just a dream this whole time? Or better yet, what were the gods playing at? Naja pondered. In the past, Naja had endured vivid dreams of battles new and old, but never had they been so prominent in her misery, let alone feel so real. She rubs her eyes roughly until they start to sting from the pressure. Sure enough, she felt pain. Pain which starts to finally catch up with her mind. She feels a twinge of itchy pain blister all across her body. She groans and wallows down to her knees. Her legs felt heavy and ready to cramp up any second. Her eyes wander curiously around her bandaged body, trying to make sense of her condition. She was stitched up and patched all over from head to toe. A vision of her sword wound flashes in her mind. She knelt down to examine it but didn't find any markings of a stab wound. Several lines of stitches were drawn across her midsection from where Solaire had swiped at her in their duel. Wow, Tinder swipes must have been insane back then. Solaire left his mark on her pretty well. Sounds pretty sexy or sexual. Sorry, every time I hear or read the word mark, especially in any context or form, and if the context isn't like educational or some kind of serious tone, this reminds me of something. I don't know, my mind just pops up something lewd. Well, she admitted to herself. His claws were as sharp as his tongue. Huh. interesting. It seemed she could only imagine what his condition was, on par with hers. She clasps her paw around the neck of the water pitcher and takes another swig from it. She stares off into the hole she tore in the tent, scattering her attention everywhere as she spies on the outside world. A feeling of alienation strikes her whilst observing the clashing cultures mingling together. It was intriguing to say the least. She inhales the last of the chilling water. It felt heavenly trickling down her parched throat, well deserving of a relieving sigh. Ah. Whoa, bandage Naya. Oh yeah, I can't do burp in a voluntary fashion. Yup, sleeping and burp. Naya chuckles softly to herself, still lost in thought. Finally awake, it sounds like. Naya's ears perk up. She twirls her head around to the source of the voice. Across the other end of the tent, a curtain was dividing the rest of the room from her. She hesitantly grips hold of the divider and swats it open. Well, if it isn't His Majesty, His Emperor Solaire. Just when Naya thought this day couldn't get any more bizarre, in front of her laid Solaire, covered from neck to toe in a full body cast. Lost in disbelief, she was caught off guard as the wounded Emperor shoots her a sly devilish grin. Although his face was littered from bruises and scars from the fight, he still manages to come off dashing as before. Admittingly, it was comforting to see him smile, she thought. Naya finds herself struggling to comprehend the situation she was in. To comprehend the situation she was in now. She was both enthralled but mournful to see Solaire. The bloody viscera of her nightmares still plagued her with a multitude of images scarring her mind. The ghastly sight of Solaire's headless body flashed before her eyes, and now seeing him as a head shrouded in white began to fracture her sanity. For the first time in her life after a battle to the death, she felt terribly ashamed of what she had done to her adversary. Sleep well, my dear. Do you have enough to eat? I have more on my table if you're still hungry. Naya blinks and snaps her mental focus back on Solaire. He motions his head to his table, which is lined with various fruits, pastries, and utensils. Naya darts her eyes around the room, while desperately trying to make sense of what was going on, her face dripping with confusion. She narrows her eyes with suspicion engraved across her face. She takes up Solaire's offer and hobbles over to the table. Thanks. Naya picks around a bowl of fruit before pulling out a red apple by its stem. How long have I been out? Oh, a few days, give or take 2 or 3. Naya was in the midst of munching on her apple when she hears the news. She chokes on her apple, grunting and grasping harshly on chunks of apple. Her eyes sink with deep hollow bags forming from her gaze. The 3 days? Solaire snickers slightly at her expense, yet offers a comforting tone to her shock. I'm not surprised that you could this long, to be honest, and neither should you. That little skirmish of ours left a toll on both of us. I'm still feeling that devastating kick to my gut you gave me. Ha! Having collected herself once more, Naya bitterly takes a bite out of her apple. Her expression becomes shaded with skepticism. He was coming off too friendly for comfort, especially for someone who was stuck in a body cast for 3 days. She was curious as to how far he'd keep up appearances with her. She did what she had to and played along with a coy smirk. I'm not surprised, at least for your condition anyway. Most of those blows were meant to kill you after all. Can't argue with the result though. Naya bites a large chunk of apple and proceeds to speak with her mouth full. So, gotta admit though, for a highborn, you got some balls surviving and having the gall to share a medic tent with me of all people. Solaire gives her a gleeful chuckle while adjusting in his cast. It felt fitting to do so. His cheerful smile slowly fades away as his attention is drawn back into the past, back to the end of their fight. A deafening roar of Imperials and Sharskarans electrified the air after both their leaders had fallen. Everyone huddled over to them, ready to erupt into a riot if either side tried to do harm to either of them. Solaire's vision was blurred and swirled uncontrollably, but he still remained conscious long enough to grip into one of his shoulders and muttered out orders. After the fight, everyone was in an uproar of what to do next. Fortunately, I came to right away and made sure to settle everything accordingly. As long as our men behave, you are our honored guest here. Honored guest, you say? Well, I guess I'll end it here. I'll be seeing you in the next, I guess, last part of Regal Tails. Bye!